Hey there, everybody. It's Steve Van Tassel coming at you again for Dynasty Owner. And we're here with another video, another podcast, talking about stacking again. And this week, it's a little bit different than what we talked about before. We've talked last week about stacking quarterbacks and wide receivers. And the previous week, we talked about stacking quarterbacks and tight ends. But this week, we're kind of going to go back to sort of the beginning a little bit, and we're going to decide whether you should to stack or not to stack. That is the question. Sorry, Shakespeare, stealing your line. Every people are going to tell you, fantasy analysts are going to tell you, oh, stack people. I stacked, Travis Kelce with Patrick Mahomes in this league last year in my dynasty league, and I won the title. They're not going to tell you in another league that they had Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and came in seventh place. Or that they, in a redraft, they took Teddy Bridgewater and DJ Moore and didn't finish in the playoffs. So everybody's kind of saying stack. You say stack, stack, stack. They highlight the good ones. They don't highlight the bad ones. But here in Dynasty Owner, we've got something a little bit different in that we've got kind of data that we can look at. And we can look at the data from 2020 and see, did the people who won the leagues last year, did they utilize a stack or did they not? So it's something different that Dynasty Owner can do. It's something different that only Dynasty Owner can do. And so it's something we want to talk about. So basically we've got here to stack or not to stack or not to stack. And sort of, that is the question. And one more thing we've got here is that only on Dynasty Owner, you're going to get some data on stacking players. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can get it on ESPN or CBS Sports, Yahoo, Sleeper, or My Fantasy League. I just don't think they keep track of sort of stuff like that. Whereas here in Dynasty Owner, we can do that. We've got the data. We can look at it. We can tell you whether more people who won their league stacked players or didn't stack players. We can tell you who they stacked last year, and we can tell you next year who they stacked again to keep helping you every year to figure out how to win your league. And the impetus behind this kind of series is that last year, our Chase for the Ring winner, Victor, and his team, Barbie Kilgore, he had a three-person stack. He had Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill, and they all played all season and were great. And he only spent 28% of his salary cap on them, so he had $80.5 million to kind of build around this team, and he won the ring. And that's kind of what we all want to win our league. We all want to make some money, maybe. We all want to win some dynasty dollars. But in the end, the great thing to try to do is to try to win that ring. So this is hopefully this sort of information will help you to do that. And so if you like this video, if you like the video talking about it, make sure to like it on the podcast. Make sure to give it a good rating and read the article on dynastyowner.com. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this. And before we get to the answer to the question, just to let you know, all the stack data is sort of from the playoffs, weeks 15 and 16. At that point, all the rosters had been frozen. And so we are able to answer the question using that playoff data. And so the answer to the question is yes. Maybe not as emphatically as Daniel Bryan said yes. Because the data shows a little bit here is that we've got out of the teams who won, a little over half, 52%, had a stack in the playoffs in 2020. The numbers creep up as we talk about the top 25. It's 56%. And then as we talk about the top 10, it's 60%. But that's what that shows. It shows that stacking is probably a good thing. More did it than didn't. However, this definition could be generous. As I said, we talked about just playoffs, and we included quarterback, running back stack. So if you had Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones, that counted as a stack. Teams could have utilized a stack in either playoff week, or they could have done it in both. We counted anybody who did a stack in either playoff week. And the stack could also have been spread across your starting lineup and the bench. Again, bench scoring, Dynasty Owner innovation. 20% of the points that your players on your bench get goes into your final score. Next year in 2021, it's going to go up to 25%. But it's something that Dynasty Owner has that nobody else has. So And while we say it's generous, we also had some stacks that weren't included. And mainly it's because we had to use the playoff data. So if you drafted a stack and utilized it early in the season, but couldn't use it in the playoffs, say you were derailed by injury, say you had Dak Prescott and you paired him up with Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb, you couldn't use that stack. Or if maybe it was ended by suspension. We had Will Fuller suspended, and I think it was week 11. So if you had which was a good affordable stack, if you had him and Deshaun Watson from Houston last year, that was a pretty good stack for the first couple of weeks of the season. But by the playoffs, you couldn't use it because Fuller was suspended and getting you 0 points. So some of them weren't included. But we think overall, in general, that more playoff winners utilized the stack than didn't. So the question is, what was the most common dynasty owner stack? We know teams did it. More teams did it than didn't. More winners did it than didn't. But what position did they do? And turns out, not surprisingly, that it was the quarterback wide receiver stack that was the most common. But interestingly, while for all the winners, it was about 44% stacked a quarterback and a wide receiver versus 36% who had a tight end stack and 28% who had a running back stack. Now, if you do some quick math, you'll realize that adds up to over 100%. But that's because you could have had two stacks. We talked about the triple stack that Victor did earlier. He had a quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end. So a couple teams had that. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But some of them utilize more than one stack. But the interesting thing about the quarterback wide receiver stack is that it goes up as you talk about teams who made it in the top 25 and then teams who made it into the top 10. We're talking about 3/4 of top 25 teams who utilized the stack. It was a quarterback wide receiver stack, and 80% was in the top 10. It was a quarterback wide receiver stack. So in terms of the most common players, not surprisingly, it was Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, tied with Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, pairing an expensive wide receiver with a not so expensive quarterback. In terms of the tight end quarterback stacks, not surprisingly, it was Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, who was the one that top 25 teams had. But what are some other stacking facts that we have from 2020? I mean, we have a lot of data, a lot of teams, a lot of leagues. What else did we find out? Well, there are a few 3-player stacks. Victor wasn't the only one to have that idea. In fact, another team who finished 7th in the chase for the ring, they had Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, running back Aaron Jones, and wide receiver Devontae Adams. Another thing that teams do, another 3-person stack that somebody did, which was our 11th place finisher, the Swamp Donkeys. They had Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, but they mixed it up a little bit and they had Robert Tonyan. But interestingly, they had Adams and Rodgers in their starting lineup, but Tonyan was on the bench. So they kind of split that stack. Some teams, they stacked in one week, but not in the other, maybe based on matchups, trying to get a good matchup. And then some teams had bench stacks. Maybe they drafted a quarterback and a wide receiver who they thought would be really good, but they didn't perform quite so well. So they benched them. They put them on their bench. About 20% of all the stacks we had in week 16 and about 1 in 6 in week 15 were those bench stacks. And then we had about a quarter of all stacks were the split stack, the kind of that I talked about earlier, where you had the quarterback for the Swamp Donkeys who had Aaron Rodgers in their starting lineup, but the tight end Robert Tonyan on the bench. So some teams did that. Another common one I remember seeing a few times when I was analyzing this data was having Kyler Murray as your starting quarterback, but having Christian Kirk on the bench as a wide receiver. So that's all the information we have about stacking. I want to thank everybody for watching this video. If you liked it, please smash the like button. And tell me that you liked it. Put a comment in about what you think about the article and the video on stacking. But remember, the takeaways here are more league winners used the stack than didn't use the stack, and it kind of creeped up as you got towards the top 25. So if you find the stack and you find the right stack, if you stack, you might find yourself in the chase for the ring. And then don't forget that because Dynasty Owner has bench, you can split some guys. So maybe you're not sure about a wide receiver or a running back or tight end. You might pair him with the quarterback that you have, but you're not sure. You can always be on your bench. If he performs well, you can move him into your starting lineup. And conversely, if you have somebody who's you think at the beginning of the season is a great stack, and the wide receiver or tight end doesn't perform very well, you can always put him on your bench for later on in the season. So thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my article that accompanies this video. That's on dynastyowner.com. And be sure to follow myself at SteveVT33 on Twitter. Follow Dynasty_Owner on Twitter. And don't forget to check out the articles from our other writers. We've got Matt the Jerk at Dynasty Jerk. His articles come out on Monday. He talks about teams. He did his top 10 tight ends for the upcoming season in Dynasty Owner. And then on Friday, you've got Jay Pounds. He's at Jay Pounds NFL on Twitter, and he talks about rebuilding. How if you've got a Dynasty Owner team that didn't perform well last year, how you can rebuild it into a league winner and maybe even a chase to the ring winner. So please check out all of us, follow all of us on Twitter, and read our articles, like our videos, listen to the podcast, and thanks for watching, listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a